Hi, I'm Tara Becker-Utess, a new academic consultant at the Ingham ISD. I'll be specializing in 6th through 12th math as well as social studies. What I've noticed in my time at the ISD is that a lot of the work, especially with the Leadership Academy, has focused on John Hattie's work. As a newcomer to the ISD, I found that what I've been reading in Hattie's work and what I've been learning about at the Leadership Academies really related well to one of my passion areas, and that's flipped learning. I flipped my own AP Government class 2 years ago and then assisted our math teachers at Charlotte in flipping their own classrooms. Many people think of the flipped classroom as simply a set of videos or just the Khan Academy approach, but it's really so much more. After this video, if you still have questions, my contact information is listed on this slide. You can contact me by email or by phone. Like I said, a lot of people think of the flipped classroom as just simply watching videos and coming in and doing the homework in class. But notice there's a difference between the flipped classroom and flipped learning. Flipped learning is a lot more than simply having the students watch videos outside of class and doing worksheets within a class. However, to invoke flipped learning, teachers must follow the 4 pillars. Flipped learning is not a methodology, it's a pedagogical strategy where direct instruction moves to individual learning and the group space is transformed into a dynamic, interactive learning environment where the educator guides students. Notice, these 4 do not tell teachers how to teach. They simply give guidelines on how to structure both the homework portion and the in-class portion of the class. So what we're going to look at in the following slides is we're going to look at some of John Hattie's effect sizes and see which ones relate to the flipped classroom. So let's take a look at this first pillar, the flexible environment. Here are some of John Hattie's influences with the largest effect size. So notice in a flexible environment, students have a lot of time to move ahead if they're feeling that the material is too easy for them. They have time to accelerate, and the teacher has provided those videos so they can move ahead. And with John Hattie's work, acceleration has an effect size of 0.88. So really helping out those kids who would like to move ahead rather than just being bored in the classroom. Formative evaluation happens every day in a flipped classroom, and this is one of the things on John Hattie's list that has the largest effect size. Teachers make decisions for classroom activities based on formative assessments that happen. In my classroom, this happened at the beginning of the block. I talked to every kid about how they understood the video and made decisions on how we should proceed as a class or how small groups should proceed. And based on that initial formative assessment, a class might look very different from block to block depending on how well kids understood that. Finally, classroom behavior has a large effect size according to Hattie. And because kids are given so much flexibility in how and where to learn the material, behavior problems almost disappear. And this can be seen in Clintondale High School, whose discipline referrals dropped massively after they went to the flipped classroom. Kids are actively involved in the instruction, and so they're not bored throughout a lecture, and so they're not causing those disruptions to the classroom. Formative evaluation piece you'll notice is in just about every one of these slides because it happens all the time in a flipped learning environment. You don't even have to wait for an exit ticket. In fact, I rarely did exit tickets in my flipped classroom because by the end of the block, based on all of my observations of those students, I knew where kids were at. Students are involved in creating their own knowledge and making decisions for themselves and communicating those decisions to the teacher about where they're at in their learning. Reciprocal teaching refers to an instructional activity that takes place in the form of a dialogue between teachers and students regarding segments of a text. The dialogue is structured by the use of 4 strategies: summarizing, question generating, clarifying, and predicting. The teacher and students take turns assuming the role of the teacher in leading this dialogue. Now, obviously this would be a really easy piece to incorporate into a flipped classroom, and it has a really high effect size. And so the idea of reciprocal teaching is allowing the student to verbalize his or her own thinking. And a lot of times things like this would be cut from a traditional classroom because there simply isn't time. But in a flipped classroom, you really have the entire block for activities where students are taking the role in verbalizing their understanding and their knowledge and their questions that they have about the material. I loved that I was able to see that the classroom discussion had such a high effect size. And I think the big piece here is students are verbally talking about the material. And when you talk about something, you're more likely to remember it. So this happens naturally in a flipped classroom, no matter what the subject is. It happened in my AP Gov class. It happened in the math classes. I've seen it in just about every content area that's flipped. So it might be a small group setting. It might be the entire classroom that's engaging in the discussion. In fact, in technology-rich classrooms, this happens in back channels like today's Meet or Twitter, and this gives even quiet or shy kids an opportunity to share their voice in what they're learning. Finally, the self-verbalization, self-questioning strategy, John Hattie gives an effect size of 0.64. And in a flipped classroom, students are engaged in this every day. They are responsible for asking the teacher questions or asking themselves, what didn't I understand in that video? And then sharing that with their group. And they have opportunities to question real life situations and how those relate to the content that they're learning in their videos. They're encouraged to verbalize their learning to other students and to the teacher, which deepens their long-term memory. Within the learning culture that is focused on students, direct instruction does not go away in the flipped learning environment. And notice that direct instruction does have a high effect size because kids do need to learn from teachers. Teachers are more of an expert than the students are. So many times in flipped learning environments, this direct instruction is presented in a video, but it doesn't have to be. It could be through a reading of a text or a reading of a primary source, but teachers decide what content is best to be presented in a video. Now, note, this video should be no more than 10 to 13 minutes for high school students and obviously less for students that are younger. And they decide how to present it. In a video, they might present only the basics of a standard and then go into more detailed instruction in the classroom. These videos allow students freedom in how to receive this direct instruction. They can pause it, they can rewind it, they can fast forward if they understand how to do a particular problem. So my guess is when students are able to rewind and rewatch the direct instruction, that effect size would go up even more. Because flipped educators have so much time in class to work with students, they have an opportunity to help them learn how to learn a topic. So when students struggle watching the video, they have the teacher in class that can provide them other ways of learning that particular topic. And this includes how to even watch the video as well. So a lot of flipped educators will allow their students the first video or the first couple of videos to watch in class to teach them how to interact with the video. And finally, for the intentional content, we look at Hattie's spaced versus mass practice. If you think of a traditional classroom, kids might be sent home with 30 math problems that they have to do all at once. As opposed to a flipped environment, students are at home and the video usually follows the I do, you do method where the teacher would do a problem and then ask the student to do a problem at home. And then in class, kids are doing more problems the next day that are a little deeper and not simply 40 problems at home all at once without the teacher there. This formative evaluation was going to show up again and again. Teachers spend the bulk of their block in a flipped learning environment observing students, catching where students are struggling right away and providing them feedback right there and then. They can talk to every kid every day. If all students in the classroom are struggling, the teacher can change the course of that lesson right there and then, and they don't even have to wait till the next day. Same goes for this feedback piece. It used to be teachers would wait for a student to turn in an assignment or not turn in an assignment and provide feedback at that point. But in the flipped learning environment, they don't even have to wait until exit tickets are turned in. Teachers can talk to every kid every day to see where their students are at and provide them with feedback relevant in that moment and to assessing their work. Finally, and I think this is one of the most powerful pieces of the flipped learning environment, is that teacher-student relationship. Teachers are talking to and working with kids every day, and so relationships are going to be formed. I found that I knew much more about my students personally and academically as a result of the flipped classroom. And because I knew them better and they knew me better, there was a much better atmosphere of trust, and kids were much. If you're interested in being taken through the flipped learning process and actually designing a flipped learning lesson, if you are a math teacher, I have 2 trainings that will be coming up and they'll be offered twice this year. 6th through 8th grade will be offered October 2nd and November 19th. and January 28th and March 25th. And then in between October 2nd and November 19th will be opportunities for instructional coaching within your classroom as you implement the flipped classroom. 9th through 12th, the same thing with the 2 sets of dates, and again, instructional coaching opportunities between those 2. If you have questions, don't hesitate at all to contact me. If you'd like to sign up, you can sign up at inghamISD.org. So here is my contact information, my email, and my phone number. If you are not a math teacher but you're interested in flipped learning, you're welcome to email me. I do hope to get some social studies dates up and running soon with the same structure as the math. So please feel free to contact me if you have any questions.